had my first child, my last day in the corporate world was the day my water broke with my oldest son. And so stayed home with my kids. That was the plan. But, anyone who's stayed home with kids, like at some point I was like, oh my gosh, I need to talk to
A
somebody.
lot.
Like, I just got to get out. I need something for
Yeah.
me.
Welcome to Mindset Mastery Podcast, where we explore the intersections of motherhood and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Julissa Edwards, and in each episode, we're diving into mindset, emotional regulation, and the real stories of mom entrepreneurs navigating both business and family life. Let's get into it.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode on Mindset Mastery with yours truly, Julissa Edwards. Today, I get to interview Amy Rowan. She is also known as the Suburban Sexologist. She's a certified clinical sexologist and sex and intimacy coach and co-host of the Sensational Sex Podcast. She owns Suburban Intimacy, where she helps her clients overcome intimacy challenges and learn how to enhance pleasure through personalized coaching, education, and support. She creates a safe space, sex positive, non judgmental space where individuals can explore their desires, enhance pleasure, and foster intimate connections. You guys, if you're not already intrigued by her title alone, this was an amazing episode to converse with her, learn so much. We spoke about postpartum, moms, sex life, partnership, how to keep the buzz going. So many things, so many things. How she has three boys. Obviously, I mean, if you guys have been following this season is all about me interviewing moms in business and how we tend to juggle it all and how it's possible and the real inside look of what that looks like. And so this was just through and through an amazing conversation. We hit so many different points. At the end, she also shares vulnerably what she's going through in this moment of her life. And it was a beautiful expression of her reality. And we were able to hold space, guide, and it was just a beautifully intimate conversation on all levels. So without further ado, please enjoy this episode. And Amy, thank you for being here. Any opening comments before we dive right into the conversation?
It's so great to see you again. It's been a year and I'm just really excited to have this conversation with you. Thank you for the opportunity. And I always just like to thank the listeners for tuning in and listening because, you're investing in yourself and your time and your business and all of that. So just everyone who's listening, thanks for taking this time for yourself.
Absolutely. I love that. Okay, girly. So, as the suburban sexologist, which that alone is like, ooh, juicy. What are we going to talk about? Right? So, what inspired you to pursue a career in sexology and intimacy coaching, especially in a culture where these topics are definitely still considered taboo?
The joke that I always lead with is my dad is retired OBGYN. My mom is a psychotherapist. They got married, had a baby, and that was
Mm.
me.
Oh my
Uh,
God, I love that. That is like, is that in your branding? That is a perfect story.
so everyone's like, oh, okay, that explains
That
everything.
makes
Right?
sense. Yes.
Um, so, talking about, taboo and culture, which I completely understand and see that every day, but it's not what I experienced growing up. The my
Mm,
my dad would be on the phone with a patient at dinner time talking about vaginal discharge or something, and it was just very
normal.
normal for me. And
Mm,
so it was never, bodies, women's bodies, fluid, all of this stuff just was not a big deal. And then, of course, my friends, going back to middle school, my friends would come ask me questions to ask my dad, questions that they didn't feel comfortable asking their mom or asking their doctor, or they didn't have anyone to ask. We didn't have the internet back then. And so
mm,
I would go ask my dad the questions. I would start to learn the answers, and I was sort of the relay person for a while. And then eventually I didn't have to ask my dad anymore. And, and that continued, all the way through college. I was in corporate America for a little while. I did HR, for some, really big, well-known companies. And then I had my first child. My last day in the corporate world was the day my water broke with my oldest son. And
mm,
so stayed home with my kids. That was the plan. But, anyone who's stayed home with kids, like at some point I was like, oh my gosh, I need to talk to
It's a
somebody.
lot.
And this, like, I just got to get out. I need something. I need something for
Yeah.
me, and it wasn't even really about, money at that point, which I'm grateful that my husband was able to provide in that way. We were lucky there, but it was something for me. And I went
Yeah.
to a sex toy party. I went to an intimacy toy party at that point in time.
Mm.
And it was so fun. And I learned something. I remember my jaw dropping and I was like, I learned something at this party. And I know a
Mm.
lot, or I thought I
Yeah.
did back
Yeah.
then, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, and I can do this flexibly while staying home with my kids and make some money. That sounds great. Sign me up. So I
Mm.
did. I signed up. I started doing it. I started doing the parties. I did them for 12 years. I built a team. I earned trips. I did that whole thing and it was great. It was beautiful,
Mm.
beautiful addition to that time in my life. But what really inspired me to take the next step was at the end of so many of those parties, and I was doing a lot, a woman would
Mhm.
come to me. I would meet with everybody privately at the end to do orders, and they would say, "Can I ask you a question?" Or, "I hope this isn't TMI." And I was like, "There's no TMI with me. There's still no TMI with me." And
Mhm.
they would confide, "I've never had an orgasm before," or "My husband and I haven't had sex in
Mhm.
3 years," or or sex is painful, any number of different things. And it was usually followed by, "And you're the first person I've ever felt comfortable sharing this with." And
Mm.
my heart would just break. And I wanted to help them so badly, but I knew that selling a toy or a lubricant might be a band-aid at best, but there was usually something much deeper going on there. And that's what inspired
Mhm.
me to go back to school and get my sexology certification. And that's given me the ability to help. Now I can help with all of these things. And I was also, so many people telling me that I was the first person they ever felt comfortable sharing this with. Just let me know. It just validated, I'm approachable. Um, I'm a mom. I've got kids. Like, I
Mhm.
think people thought, oh, the sex toy girl is going to be showing up in leather and whips and chains. And some of them do. And there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that, but that's not me.
Mhm.
So, and I think that's part of what made it feel so comfortable and approachable and less taboo.
I love that. What a beautiful story, reality that it just kind of perfectly fell into place. Here you are providing a service that was so needed. Your background, um, growing up and not having it be taboo or weird to talk about your vagina or sex or that all that comes with it. And then finding that women needed just a little bit more intimacy, even after those, you know, presenting your products or that you were representing before in the past. So finding a need and then going ahead and doing it because it felt aligned, but it was also a need,
Mhm.
right?
Oh, there's
And
a huge, enormous. I see it illustrated every day.
yeah, I bet. And so when we talk about business, like that's an important piece of it, right? Like either you're going to be doing something that people already know about, that we need something to happen here, or something that you've kind of come across that maybe some people know, some people don't, but you felt called to be that person to connect the bridge.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's interesting. I was just at a networking event last night, and um whenever I go to a networking event and everyone goes around and introduces themselves, and I always try to be last because the minute I say sexologist, it's like it's like break,
Mhm.
all eyes on me, all conversation stops. And I genuinely, it's
Mm,
not my intention to like take all the attention. I'm not trying to do that, but that's what happens every time. And then it's always
mm,
like, sexologist, what is that? What does that mean? I don't even know
mhm,
what that is. I didn't know that that existed. What do you do? And so, to
mhm.
your point, and that was a big aha at the blocks too, was, I have to let people know that I exist, because most people
Yes.
don't know that what I do exists. So,
Mhm. The informing piece. Yeah. Okay. So that is amazing within itself. And then on top of that, you're also a mom of three.
yep.
Yes. How old are your kiddos?
I've got 3 boys. They are 16, 13, and my baby just turned 11. So he's not really still my baby. He's
Oh,
always going to be my baby. So yeah, but
of
they're
course.
got older kids now. I'm like an older mom now, or like a medium mom. I'm a medium mom these
Media
days.
mom, yeah.
A medium mom.
Yeah. But it's beautiful. It's all beautiful. A large part of my work has been working with a lot of moms. And something that I love about motherhood is that no matter what stage you're in, it's ever evolving, it's ever changing, it's ever pivoting. And I've had the blessing of working with moms, with adult children, much older, like adult children, like in their 50s. And it's still like motherhood challenges still exist. Um, and it's really beautiful. It's like here we are, kind of like we go on this journey where we think it's about this baby, and it is in the beginning,
Yeah.
and it,
Snuggle.
yes, fully consumes your life. And then it's like, no, we're actually in this for the long haul.
Yeah.
Um, and then of course us being, adults and daughters ourselves, that also provides another piece of perspective of like, okay, I can maybe see into the other side of things of maybe how my parents feel for certain things. And so, anywho, all that to say, mom of three boys at that, kudos to you, mama. Um, how do you juggle? How is that like? Or maybe not juggling, but what does that life look like personally navigating motherhood, entrepreneurship, a fulfilling intimate relationship, and just the demands of life and family?
I mean, when you list it like that, that sounds really impossible. But it is. I mean, that is my life. I chose this life. I'm grateful for it every
Yeah.
single day. 3 kids is I people, people are like, "Oh, I have 2 kids. I'm thinking about 3, and I'm like, 3 is a
Oh, talk
carefully
to me because I'm thinking
yeah.
about three.
Are
Talk
you?
to me. Yes.
It
Yes.
is a carefully coordinated, chaotic 3-ring circus at all times. Like that never ends. And
Okay.
I love it. I
Fair.
love it. I thrive in chaos. That's a good place for me. Uh, I'm for me, and I've heard different things about this, but for me, the jump from 2 to 3 was very challenging. I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, 2 to 3 was easy." 2 to 3 for me was hard. I learned that my brain can easily keep up with 2 children. And
Mm,
especially my youngest, he's still an Energizer bunny. The
mm,
joke was, "Where's Andrew?" Because I would always, be scared. I'd be like, "Where's Andrew? Where's Andrew?" Like always, and then having
mm.
to run around and find him. Um, but I love it. I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. And balance, I I don't like there's no balance.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think this myth of balance, there will never be balance. And if the longer you keep
Mhm.
striving, this is for me, I would say, but the longer
Yeah.
you keep
Yeah.
striving for balance, you're just going to keep frustrating yourself because you're going to always feel like you're losing because you are. And so
Hmm.
it's just rolling with it. For me, like after managing 2 children, 2 of my 3 children have ADHD, and so does my husband. And I realized about 2 years ago, I think I might have that too. And finally, getting some support for that. And with each child, I've been forced to become more organized. I'm not necessarily naturally an organized person, though I think if you talk to anybody who worked
Mm,
with me, they would describe me as organized, which cracks me up. But
mm,
it's something that's had to happen. And
mhm.
so,
I can
I
relate.
have backup plans upon backup plans. I ask for help and I gratefully receive it. My parents help me, you know, and I think that's this other thing with I see it so many times with moms if they're trying to do every single thing and people are
By
offering to
themselves.
help
Yep.
them and they're
Hmm.
like, "No, I can do this." I'm like,
Hmm.
"Girl, say
Hmm.
yes. Take the
Hmm.
help."
Hmm.
And
Yes.
you don't try you can't do it all, and the more you try, the more frustrated and anxious and stressed and tired and exhausted you're going to get. So accept the help, and if you need to, this is going to sound a little bad, but if you need to train the help, and I'm talking about husbands here, then train the help. So
Hmm.
another big thing that I observed in a lot of my friends, and my husband stepped in very seamlessly, and I'm very grateful that that came to him naturally, but that's not always the case with husbands. But, I would have friends who would say, "Oh, I can't leave the baby home with the husband because he'll just call me the whole time or whatever, or he'll put the diaper
Hmm.
on wrong." And I'm like, put the diaper on wrong. So what? Like
Yeah, they'll figure it out. Yes.
if the kid has the diaper on backwards and, shows up at a play date with no socks and in a onesie,
Hmm.
so what? Right? You got a
Hmm.
break
Hmm.
and you need that time. And you also need to help teach and empower him to to
Mm.
be a part of,
Yes.
and if he's doing things and you're criticizing him constantly on how he's doing it,
Yes.
then guess
Yes.
what? He's gonna stop. So you
Yes.
gotta step back and let him do it his way, even if it's not your way, even if, like, I remember once he took my 18-month-old to watch football with a friend, and there was nap time. I was like, okay, you need to go down for a nap at this time and blah, blah, blah. I had this whole
Hmm.
plan, and
Hmm.
he came home and I said, so, did he take a nap? And he's like, oh no, I gave him a lollipop and he dipped it in Dr. Pepper. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? He was like, no, it was great. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
you know what?
So, all right. This segment alone could just be a completely like an episode on its own. In my time of helping moms and women, there is I really I believe it's being curated because of the society that we're being raised in, where like we're just inundated in information and we are like overly educated on all the things that should be happening with children. And it's not a horrible thing, but it can definitely become anxiety producing to
Oh,
those individuals that feel like they have to know everything in order to be the best mom or a caretaker or whatever. And yes, like stereotypically, dads can be a little bit more chill, relaxed. It's like, yeah, you had a lollipop for nap time and it was, or instead of nap time and it was fine, you know? And in the grand scheme of things, it's like, it's it's actually fine, you
yeah.
know? But in the day to day, when you don't have time away or to reflect or to breathe or to rest, you think that a lot of times things have to be perfect. And if it doesn't go according to schedule, something bad will happen, right? And so I agree with everything that you're saying. I think it's such a lived common experience for moms. And I've heard from a lot of moms with three children that you tend to just get more I don't want to say like more relaxed where you don't care, but you have a
Totally.
better helicopter view of like what matters and what doesn't.
Yeah, you have to. Like, you have to. You
Hmm.
have to let go of some of these things because it's impossible. And
Yeah.
and the way you parent each of your children, I mean, you have to parent them differently because they all have very different personalities. At least, I've got three boys, and all three of them, actually the oldest and the youngest, are more similar, and then the middle one got a totally different set of genes. And I see, and all three of them are reflections of us, but they're all very
Mm.
different. And you have to parent each
Mhm.
child differently, which is challenging because, I remember saving my oldest son's cars and construction equipment, but the middle son liked boats and trains. And then the youngest son, all he wanted to play was balls. And so I couldn't even pass down the toys from one to another.
Mm.
And yeah, and you just have to let go the things that you can do with your first when you just have one. You can't do
Yeah.
that with your third when one is in elementary school, another
Yep.
one is a toddler, and the third just
Yep.
was popped in the carrier, and we just went, and
Yes.
and that's just what had to happen. And does he know the difference? No, that's just how he was raised. And you
Mm.
definitely, I think I was sharing this with somebody else recently, with the third child too. Like, I knew he was going to be my last. And I
Mm.
was really able to soak up so much of
Savor.
that and
Oh,
enjoy it so
yes,
much.
that's what I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I remember when he turned 3, and I remember being so fascinated with him when he was 3. And I was like, why don't I remember this? Like, I don't remember
Mm.
anything about 3. And then I was like, oh yeah, every time I've had a 3-year-old, I've had a newborn. So I've been with
Mm.
my newborn. I've been focusing primarily on my newborn because that's what you have to do. And so I really missed a lot of 3. And so I really enjoyed,
Mm.
especially 3 with him, because I just had never gotten to really see and soak that up.
Damn. Well, that is it for me. We're having sex after this
Did I
episode.
convince
We are
you?
making a third baby. Yes. I mean, I already knew that I wanted a third baby. It was just a matter of like timing and stuff like that. But I literally had your same sentiments of like, I know that if we have a third, it's definitely going to be our last. And I would just enjoy it more. It doesn't take anything away from the other two. I love them so much, you know, and it's just going to be a different experience. And like, yeah, bring on the chaos. I love the idea of having a baby strapped onto me while the kids are growing up and in school and all the things. Like, beautiful. So thank you for sharing.
Cool.
Okay, so you've been married for 20 years. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Can you share some common myths about intimacy in long-term relationships and how you can keep the spark alive?
Yeah. I love this question. The one of my big talks that I give, whenever I'm invited to come and give a talk, this is usually the first thing that I share because this blows everybody away. And
Mm,
one of the things that I hear frequently is we've been married for a long time, we've been together for a long time, and that spark is just gone. Like we want it back. Like, why can't it be? Where's that spark from the beginning? Why can't
mm.
sex be like I remember when sex was spontaneous and we just would see each other, we'd rip each other's clothes off, and it was just animalistic and primal. And like, how can we get back to that?
Yes.
And
Mhm.
and that is this huge myth. I call it the myth of spontaneous sex. So I'm going to take you
Mm.
back. We're going to go back to, and for me, the last time that I was in an early relationship was about 24 years ago. So there wasn't any
Okay.
like phones or texting, right? But you go back to those early days, right? You're dating and
Hmm.
you call each other up, or maybe you're texting. I guess that's how it's done now, and you make a plan and you're like, hey, let's meet up. It's Wednesday, let's say. Okay, we're gonna meet up on Saturday night. We're gonna go out to eat, or we're gonna go whatever it is that you're gonna go do. And Thursday comes, you're looking forward to it. You're talking to your girlfriend on the phone. What should I wear? Should I wear this? Maybe you're living with a roommate and you're trying on her clothes and putting on the cutest outfit. And you're looking forward to every single step of this. You're anticipating Saturday, right? And he is
Mm.
too, ideally, or I shouldn't say he, your partner,
Mhm.
the person you're dating is too. And so there's all of this buildup. There's all of this, looking forward to, I assume these days at this point, you're texting back and forth and kind of flirting on text. And I can't wait to see you. And it's going to be so much fun.
Mm.
And then you finally get to that date and you have that wonderful dinner. And maybe it's the magical third date, if that's even a thing anymore. Back in my day, the third date was the date that you were supposed to have
Made
sex,
it
which
official. Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Which I don't believe any, there's no expectation or
Yeah.
timeline. Let's throw that one out. But anyway,
Yeah.
but by the time you get there, you've been looking forward to it. And then by the time you're ripping each other's clothes off, you've been looking
Hmm.
forward to this for 4 days. You've been anticipating
Yeah.
4 days. This is not spontaneous sex. There's been so much anticipation and buildup and flirting and fun that has led to that moment of spontaneous sex. So how
Mm.
do we bring that into our
Create that.
long-term relationship, right? It's that
Mm.
concept of positive anticipation. So now this is the piece of advice that I give to every long-term couple, and people have so much pushback against it, but hear me out. I do this in my marriage, and I recommend this to every long-term couple. So the advice is scheduling sex. Well, hey, Amy, that's the opposite of
Mhm.
spontaneous sex. What do you mean
Mhm.
schedule sex? Like put it on my
Mm.
calendar? Yeah, it is on my calendar. It says Amy and James lunchtime. Schedule sex. Okay, well
Mm.
that sounds boring. So
Okay.
what? You just like meet in the bedroom and like are like, okay, we're gonna have sex now. Yeah, that does sound boring. That's not fun. I mean, it could be fun, I suppose, maybe if that's your thing. But it's creating that positive anticipation, right? So let's say, hypothetically speaking, maybe your scheduled sex happens at lunchtime on Wednesdays. You both work from home.
Mhm.
Hypothetically speaking, of course. So
Mhm.
Monday, since I'm looking forward to Wednesday, I'm excited. Oh, I added a new song to our
Mm.
little playlist. Oh, those panties that I got you. Would you wear those? Flirt, flirt, flirt. Fun, fun, fun. That's the other
Mm.
piece that I think we often lose is the funness of it. Sex
Mm.
is the playful element. Like sex is adult play. Like it is our adult playground. It is our opportunity not to just have sex and pleasure, which of course is fantastic, but to play and laugh. And
Mhm.
it gets so serious. And so
Mm.
when you can embrace that flirty playfulness, when you can bring that back in, I'm really, you know, I'm even just something as simple as you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna like flirt. Okay, well, just really looking forward to tomorrow. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to this
Mm.
time with you. Like, that's good. That makes you feel good. How good would you feel if you got a text, from your husband and he was like, I'm really, really looking forward to like, tomorrow.
Mhm.
Like, that would
Mhm.
give you a little, right? That's going to give you
Yeah.
that little boost, that little perk. And so, so that's the biggest myth that I like to break down. And then I'd say schedule sex, but then create that positive anticipation.
I love that. Okay, so I have a second question to that. So first of all, thank you for you're a great storyteller. I was definitely like back into like my high school and college self of like dating and remembering how fun and exciting that was. And like, yeah, then life got serious and all the things. And so I can definitely see how scheduling sex can, yes, build the anticipation and make it fun again, right? And so I'm definitely gonna start doing that. My second question here, in being that I work with so many mamas, postpartum and all the things, um, there's so much time that or there's so many experiences that we might feel that we're not sexy anymore, or we don't feel comfortable, or flirting was such a thing of the past. Like, how do you even do that anymore? What's the advice there?
It's our bodies go through so many changes, and it's so challenging. And of course, I've been through that. I've been through pregnancies. I had a double mastectomy, and when you
Mm,
aren't feeling good about yourself on the outside, it is so hard to slip into that sexy mindset. And of important there's so many different pieces into this, but the short piece of advice that I can offer in that is creating a transition time, transitioning from mom to sex goddess,
mm.
or maybe not sex goddess, but just mom to I'm even willing to entertain going into the bedroom right now. Um,
Okay, that's
we
good.
need we need a little time there. And it's not a
Mm,
flip of a switch for us. So there's a whole scientific thing behind it, responsive desire, spontaneous desire, things like that.
mm,
But the transition time is key. And we need a little time to decompress. We need a little time to relax, take a shower. Like, yes, of course, if you haven't showered, if you got spit up all over
mm.
you, like you
You're not
feel
gonna feel sexy.
nothing,
Hmm.
stay at home mom living in sweats, like, no, you don't feel sexy at all. And I'm so
Mm,
grateful to my husband because he would like the nights that, and at that point I felt the same way. Like, as a sexologist, as somebody who was selling sex toys, as all of that stuff, I was in those same places. My husband
mm,
would know that if, this was a night that he wanted, and it wasn't getting lucky because we would talk about things, but he would say, honey, like, go relax, go upstairs, take a bath, take a shower, just go chill for a little bit. I'm going to
mm,
go read stories to our kids. You can come and kiss them goodnight. Or like maybe at that point I
mm,
was even nursing the baby. He's like, I'll put the other two to bed. You nurse the baby. Once you get the baby down, just go relax, do something nice for yourself. Maybe bring me a glass of wine. I don't really drink anymore, but that was just a nice relaxation thing there.
mhm,
And decompress and taking that transition
mm,
time. The other thing that's really important is sexy should not start when the lights go out at night, right? So, and that's the other thing that tends to happen is like you have the day, all the things are happening, and then you finally get in bed, and then husband reaches over and starts doing whatever it is that they all have their little signs,
mm,
and we're like,
mhm.
what?
Yeah, I'm exhausted.
I'm
Hmm.
exhausted. I'm tired. I don't feel good. And so knowing what those things are, everyone has accelerators in their head, sexual accelerators, things that turn you on, and we have sexual brakes, things
Hmm.
that turn us off. And you have
Mm,
to know what those things are. And then you need to learn how to turn on the ons and turn off the offs, right? So if a turn off for you is I haven't showered, well, then make sure that you shower, right? Your partner also needs to
mm,
know these things and help facilitate those things for you. So a turn off for me was always like my children being awake or being afraid that my children would hear us. And so
mm,
one thing that we learned to do was we would put on like all of the bathroom fans around the house. And at some point, we would have like floor fans in the hallway. What's interesting about that is like I would hear my husband would go turning on all the fans. And so that was a sign. I was like, okay, I know I know what he'd like to do tonight. But now whenever I hear
Mm.
fans go on, it actually turns me on. So
Yeah,
that's
I
turned
just
into an
love that.
accelerator for me because we've now had so much fun with bathroom fans on.
Hey mamas, let me ask you this. Do you dream of starting your own business but feel overwhelmed by where to begin? You're not alone, and that's exactly why I created our free WhatsApp group, Balancing Business and Babies, a safe space for moms like you who are ready to take that first step towards entrepreneurship while balancing the beautiful chaos of motherhood. Inside, you'll find daily mindset shifts and tips, encouragement from women on the same journey, and bi-weekly free community calls. Whether you are still in the dreaming phase or ready to take action, this group is here to support you every step of the way. And the best part? It's totally free. Just click the link in the show notes below to join. Mama, your dreams are very much possible, and you don't have to do it alone. Let's build your vision together, and I'll see you in the group inside.
As a therapist, I do so much work in helping people learn more about themselves. And I have no training in like the sexual side of things, and so learning from you is really, I love it because it's just going to show again that in order to be closer to somebody else, I teach and speak about intimacy in not physical, like love with your children, with other people, being able to have empathy for others. It starts with yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
what I'm hearing from you is that, yes, like you have to be able to know what turns you on, what turns you off. Love the scientific background. I would love to probably read that at a later time, all your insight on like what's actually happening chemically in the body and in the brain. But just for, just in basic understanding that, yes, you have to learn what turns you on and turns you off and maybe a more like up to date version, not of that of your early 20s, right? And knowing what allows your body, correct me if I'm wrong, to feel safe enough to enter that kind of anticipation environment where you're ready to have sex, and then effectively communicating that to your partner.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it's an impossible thing to break down, in a short time frame. I will
Or,
a book that I recommend to everybody is Come As You Are by Dr. Emily Nagoski. It's a easy book to read. It's a great book.
okay.
If you are a mom and you spend a ton of the time in the car like I do, older kids, I am driving and dropping them off. You probably couldn't listen to it with them in the
Mhm.
car, but it is a beautiful, easy book. Everyone should read it. So that's a great one. I
Okay.
also have a podcast called the Sensational Sex Podcast with another
Yes, we
sexologist.
will link
And
it in the show notes. Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
and it's about helping couples in long-term relationships thrive after the honeymoon stage is over. And every single episode, we break down pieces of this and give tiny little micro steps. And if you
Mm.
apply one of these little micro steps into your bedroom every single night, your sex life is going to improve. And we go deep into all of this. So
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, so much to learn. Okay, so I know that our listeners are learning so much already. This is so beneficial for everyone, but yeah, most of my population, they're moms, or women that are looking to be moms. And so we spoke about getting to know yourself deeper. That to me comes with like education, right? Like learning more about yourself and then again being able to deliver that information to other people. Um, what would you say is the biggest obstacle that people have to overcome that maybe in their minds they make it bigger than what it is, and when you actually begin working with them, it's actually not so hard to do.
um that's such an interesting question. The education piece is critical. That's like the basis of what I do. I started actually with a new client 2 days ago, and this is a couple in their late 40s that they had a really amazing sex life until she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and now she's on these drugs that are really suppressing her libido. And we were just talking about some different things, and she said something, and I was like, wait a second, back up. Do you know about this? And she was like, what are you talking about? I was like, hold up. wait a minute, we're going to do an
Mm,
anatomy lesson. And she's like, an anatomy lesson? I was like, we're doing an anatomy lesson. And she's like, can my
mm,
husband come watch? I was like, absolutely. And I have a whole pillow with anatomy, and this like basic female anatomy, how our bodies actually
mm,
work. I would
mhm,
say I have to teach that to every single person, and there's a huge aha within that
mm,
to everyone. And because the way that we have been taught to have sex, the way that
mm,
we expect to have sex and our partners too, it's broken and it's
mhm.
not realistic, and it does not serve the way that our bodies are built. And
Mm,
people, so for example, another huge question I get is, Amy, what's wrong with me? I almost never, or I have never been able to experience an orgasm during intercourse. What's wrong with me? I I can only have an orgasm if there's some sort of clitoral stimulation. Well,
mhm,
guess what,
mhm,
girl? There's nothing wrong with you, because
mhm.
less than 8% of women can experience an orgasm on penetration alone.
Alone.
Our
Mhm.
bodies were not built for that.
Mm. Taking the
So,
shame out of it.
mhm. And once they
Yes,
realize there's nothing wrong with them, that
mhm,
their bodies are actually working exactly the way they were designed to work, then they're like,
mhm,
oh, so there's nothing wrong that I need to use my toys so that I can have an orgasm during intercourse. I'm like, no, not at all.
mhm,
Congratulations,
mhm,
you know exactly what works for you. And
mhm, mhm,
that's perfect. And you know that. And now you don't need to feel any shame or guilt for needing that, because it's not, because that's how your body works.
Yeah, yeah. Education is key for so many things, right? You don't know what you don't know. And I think,
Mhm.
like we were saying in the beginning of our conversation, sex is something that is so taboo. Culturally, it could be just seen as promiscuous, or you're not supposed to desire this, or whatever beliefs you have in your head about sex. And then learning that, like, well, no, this is actually a really common experience for women all over the world. And it's like, oh, okay. I meant to ask this before when you were giving the advice of having good transition periods from like momming to sexy time. Um, it's under I believe, tell me if this is correct, that men are obviously biologically different from women. They have different experience when it comes to entering parenthood, and things of that sort. So it's much easier for them, correct, to get into the swing of things or want to regain that again. And so I love how your husband was so supportive during your postpartum journey of like, go upstairs, take a bath, whatever you need to do. And it's not unfair. It's because they technically don't need all of that transition, correct?
Correct. So the other joke that I make about that is, men are like microwaves, beep, 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 they're hot. Women are like
Mm-hmm.
ovens. We need to preheat. And
Mm-hmm.
that, and that preheating time, if we're talking specifically in the bedroom, and right now we're talking out, but in the bedroom, this is another thing. There's so many Hollywood movies, porn, all of that stuff has given, this is another big myth, that this impression that we get aroused and or are ready to orgasm in like 5 minutes, right? And you see every single, even just Hollywood, every single movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
The lead couple, they're in the elevator, and then they're in the hotel room, and within 2 seconds she's having a big orgasm. Don't even get me started on
Mm-hmm.
porn. So
Mm-hmm.
but on average it takes most women 20 to 40 minutes to get
Mm,
fully aroused. 20 to 40 minutes. 40
mm,
minutes. There are so
mhm,
many women who, most men, generally speaking, I think really are trying. They know, okay, I know we've got to do a little foreplay. I'm going to try and do something. And there are so many women who are laying there. And I was that woman. I was that same woman who was laying there. 'Cause sometimes those first few minutes, 5 minutes, can feel anywhere from like irritating to mildly uncomfortable to kind of nothing. Like you don't feel anything at all
mhm,
yet, because it takes so much longer. Again, this is biological. For men,
mm,
it's blood flow, right? The blood flows into their penis, they get erect. It's the exact
Mm,
same process for us. It just takes much longer for that blood and that engorgement to happen in our pelvic region. It takes longer for that blood to
mm,
get there. And that's what creates that arousal. And it
mm,
just takes all of that time. And there are so many women who 10 minutes in where they're like, not really feeling it. Okay, well, I don't know. It's not gonna happen for me. Like, go ahead, you finish, good, whatever. And then they roll over and, you know, generally she feels a little resentful. Trust me, he knows, he feels it. He probably feels bad, you
mm,
know, but, and then we have two people with their backs facing each other who just had an intimate experience, and both of them are leaving that experience feeling bad about it.
mm,
And then do they want to repeat that experience? Right?
mhm, mhm,
Yes, he still wants sex, but she's slowly moving further and further away and feeling more and more apathetic because there's nothing in it for her. And
mm.
there's more to it. It's not always just this, but I would venture to guess my experience has been, and the aha that I had, because I remember sharing this with my husband. I was like, I don't know if you realize that for me, sometimes the first, it can be a very long time. Like it can be irritating. It can be like, I don't feel anything. And one day I decided, I was like, I'm just going to let it take as long as it takes. I'm going to stop wondering what's wrong with me. Why is this taking so long? Do I really like this? Why is the dog barking? Blah, 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 blah. All of that stuff. But you
Mhm,
just get into these self-doubt spirals. And I was like, I'm just going to stop worrying about it. And I'm going to let it take as long as it takes. And if it takes 40 minutes, cool, it takes 40 minutes, And once I
mm,
let that go, never been a problem since. And then there's also wonderful products that
mm,
can help with that too. There's arousal gels and there's toys and there's other things that can certainly shorten that cycle. But you deserve that time. 20 to 40 minutes in
mm.
the grand scheme of things of life
Mhm,
is
mhm,
nothing.
mhm,
Would you rock your
mhm.
baby to sleep for 20 minutes if they needed to be rocked to sleep for 20 minutes?
Of
Absolutely.
course, yeah. Mhm.
So
Beautiful. Well, this was super insightful. Thank you so much, Amy. We're definitely going to have all that in our show notes so that people can follow and do all of that. But I would love to take some time now. Um, Anything in your personal life, business, that anything, motherhood, that has been troubling for you and you would like to bring to the table and hopefully possibly receive some guidance, but if nothing else, at least let me hold space for that at this time.
thank you for opening up that space. I think I was like, let me dig into something that's really, because I think it's so easy for us to just be like, okay, I'm just gonna package this and put this away. Um,
Yeah,
but I think, personally, the challenge that I'm experiencing right now as a mom of a teenager, two teenagers now
yeah,
actually, but my oldest teenager, um, and he's struggled a lot with so many things, and we are deeply connected. We communicate really, really well, but we're both empaths and we empath each other all the time, for better or for worse. Um,
Mm,
and he's doing he's 3 weeks into doing a lot better, but he had some major mental health challenges in the fall. And I'm not going to go
okay,
deep into that just out of his
sure.
privacy.
Yeah,
Um, and it's he's also 16, and so it's one of those very difficult things where it's like we need to remain connected, but also I need to start pulling apart a little bit and not allowing my emotions to be so tied up with his, because he's
mm,
pushing me away, as he should. Like, that's exactly what he's supposed to be doing at
mhm,
this age. And
mhm,
learning to separate some of that stuff is very challenging. I don't know, that's
mm.
what's coming to me right now. So
Thank you for sharing. This is your firstborn.
yes, this is
Your
my firstborn.
firstborn?
Yes.
Yeah. I was just having this, not this same conversation, but something similar, and I hope it helps with, I do community calls bi-weekly for an entrepreneurial group that I have with just moms. And I love talking about motherhood. I think it's so special. And the thing about motherhood is that if you let it allows us to understand ourselves that much deeper. Love is such a powerful entity, and it can be like ever consuming, especially, a mother's love to a child.
Yeah.
And so I can only imagine, your child going through something so hard, so emotional. And it seems like from what you're telling me, before even this happening, you guys were already very close to begin with,
Yeah.
right? And then kind of getting enmeshed with his emotions. And so now you're at a place where I'm like, okay, maybe that's not the healthiest for me, right? As a mom, and how can I continue to be supportive to him, but not get overly inundated with what's happening in his personal life and still being his mom and being able to mentor and be there for him, but protect my sanity and my groundedness. And so in today's conversation earlier today, we were talking about this is going to go left, but I promise it's going to make sense, hopefully. We're talking about anxiety, just general anxiety,
Yeah.
and how I always teach my clients that anxiety is like this big monster underneath the bed. And it only gets bigger and scarier when we choose to not look at it. Right. And I made a joke and I was like, if you actually took time to sit with the monster, like he might be ugly and hairy, but maybe he's kind of cute.
Mhm.
And you start to realize like why he even came to be. Saying a he, it could be anything, why he even came to be. And the purpose of this conversation was to show that like when you spend time with yourself, you learn, why do you have these perspectives? Why did you latch on to your son so easily? What caused you guys both to become so enraveled within each other for good reasons? And maybe now it's been for not so good reasons, right? No judgment. The same way that you were talking about allowing yourself to enjoy the sexual experience, even if it took 40 minutes, it's like, yeah, we're just going to just flow with this, And when it comes to raising children, what I've learned through helping other women through this is that our children continuously teach us so much about ourselves, about our insecurities, about our worries, about everything. We see bits of ourselves in them, making it easier for us to attach to them, And if by any chance, whatever he's going through, you have any experience in, then that's a perfect recipe to be completely triggered in two ways, right? As a remembrance of what happened in the past in your life, but then also of like, oh my God, what's happening to my son in his life,
Yeah.
right? And so the goal when we're looking at the scary monster underneath the bed is to remind, just like we would a child, and I'm gonna bring it back to like earlier years, like when they're like 3, 4, 5, and maybe the first time they're going to school and they're having little problems, but big, when it comes to like social. And thank you for being open and honest,
Yeah,
Amy.
I know. Ooh,
Um,
you can tell this is getting to me.
it's
But
okay. Yeah, thank you for
I'll
being
keep going
being open and
though.
allowing us to get there. Yeah. Bringing it back to like when they're young and they're in school and like maybe they have their first heartache or like a friend didn't want to play with them and whatever, it's big to them in their world at that time. And it is really big. Um, when a child looks to us for comfort, or guidance, or if they're brave enough, because to actually allow themselves to fully be seen in their emotion, which it looks like your son is. So that's kudos to you, Mama. You are a safe space for him. You know, um, as the adult, when I talk, this also goes into like inner child healing. You are intended to be someone that is solid. Doesn't mean that you can't have feelings, but when someone is sharing, like think of a 5-year-old who's like, "Oh my God, I had a horrible day at school." I was going to say work, at school, and this kid made fun of me or whatever, and you listen, you empathize, you hold, you caress, and then you give guidance,
Yeah.
right? If at that moment when the child is little and they express whatever happened, and you met that with more anxiety or more sadness, it's not helping. And over time, they might think, well, I don't know if I can, like, is this a safe space? Is this person's container big enough for me to be my full authentic self and my full authentic emotional expression? Can they handle it? right? And so obviously, as kids get older, that gets harder and harder and harder. It's not just a boo-boo, these are big life experiences,
Big kids,
you
big
know?
problems.
Yes, 1000%. Yes. And so it's the reminder of the inner child healing, the monster underneath the bed. It's like, okay, I'm going to choose to look at you. It's a really hard thing that we're doing that we're not going to avoid, but I'm going to remember that I'm the parent. And I literally say this not just for you and your son, but like self to self. Like when we just had to do the inner work and look at our own inner traumas, it's like your inner child is begging you to be able to hold space and not go on the emotional roller coaster with them, right? And so hard as a mama, right? It's a little bit of a separation where it's like I'm going to be there for my son. I'm going to empathetically hold him, caress him, nurture him, be there for him, guide him. And if I have any other resentments, not resentments, residual feelings of what has occurred, that gets to be tackled on my own time,
Yeah.
which I'm sure you're doing. Um, he gets to see me as a human being that loves and cares and is worried about him, but not to the extent where he doesn't know if I'm okay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And does that resonate?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's, the beautiful thing, I don't necessarily want to toot my own horn, but I think one thing that I've done well as a parent is Um, I've always told him from the beginning, I'm like, look, you're my first child. So every single age that you go through is the first time that I've ever parented a child of that age. And so I don't
Yes.
know how to parent a 12-year-old until I parent you at 12. I don't know how to parent a 13-year-old until I parent you at 13. And your brothers are
Mhm.
benefiting from all the things that I'm learning with you. And I'm
Yeah.
not perfect and I'm going to make mistakes but I'm always going to do the best that I can with whatever I know at the time. And
Mhm.
I've never tried to tell him or show him that I'm perfect. Like he certainly sees that I'm not, because I'm not. I'm not perfect. Nobody's
Mhm.
perfect.
Mhm.
Um, but I liked what you said about holding the container for him because I know he feels safe, that he can come to me and he shows me these really big things and I can usually hold it together for him and then I got to go someplace else and lose my shit 2 days
Yeah.
later. I've recently
Mhm.
started therapy, which has been very good and beneficial for me and that was a big thing for me because you know I give all I do mindfulness and meditate and take some time
Mhm.
for yourself. I'm terrible about it. I'm terrible. It's something. It's January. I'm gonna do so much. I'm gonna do better this year. 2025 is my year. um
Okay.
but we have to take time to nurture ourselves to be the best um that we can be for our kids. And I think another thing that stood out, and I don't know how I feel about it, but it's certainly been accurate for me, is that a mother is only ever as happy as her saddest child. And
I never heard that before.
that just
Mm.
because, and generally speaking,
Oh.
it's been my oldest child that has struggled the most. And I
Mm.
think that's why my emotions. So I'm like, when he's doing good, I'm doing great. When he's not doing
Mm.
good, like it's very hard for me not to let it seep into
Of
other aspects of
course.
my life. But
Yeah.
but I can't unless I'm in a situation where like it's an emergency, that kind of thing. But it's it I like what you said about the container and just holding that and then, continuing to consciously pull things out while being able to show yourself and your emotions. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for allowing us to go there and be so vulnerable. I'm sure many mothers will benefit from that insight as well, let alone all the gems that you dropped for us beforehand. I have loved this conversation. I always love I really I'm going to give you more roses because not everybody lets us get there. I
Mhm.
joke, this is season 2 of the podcast, and season 1 I interviewed a lot of men and women, more probably more men because it was like I was interviewing like CEOs, high achievers, all the things, and it just tends to be more men than not. And I would hold the space at the end of the episode to be vulnerable and all the things. And sometimes you could see when there was like calculated answers. And this is like loving on everybody. There's no diss here whatsoever. But as a therapist, like I just see it's like, okay, this person is still like trying to appear perfect even in their imperfections, right? And that's okay. It is what it is. And then there's other individuals like yourself that allow us to just be human and fully be seen and heard. And it's so beneficial for you, so beneficial for us, so beneficial for our audience. And there's just so much power in vulnerability. And I think I know one of my biggest challenges that I've had to combat a lot and still do combat in my journey as an entrepreneur and as a leader, in my spaces is that like, how much is too much, right? Like, how much can I share? And like, and it's always a really good reminder whenever I hold space for other people, I literally never think it's too much. I never like this you have duality. You can be a really and powerful leader and have great knowledge and strengths in helping people in one facet and also still be going through it in another. And it does not take away at all from the greatness that you provide for other people. In fact, it makes you more relatable,
Yeah.
right? So thank you for allowing that to happen on today's episode. And we'll start wrapping up because I could talk to you for hours, it seems, which I love. But thank you for all the gems that you dropped earlier. How can people find you? How can people work with you?
So, the first place I'd like to invite you, if any of these things that I was saying was resonating, and I feel like I barely scratched the surface on being able to help with, it's one thing to be like, oh, plan sex, and you're like, but if I don't even want to be touched, why am I going to plan sex, right? So
Mm,
if that is you, if that's resonating with you, please, please, please come listen to the Sensational Sex Podcast. I've partnered
mm,
with Dr. Trina Reed. She is well-respected professional. She's been doing this for 25 years. I'm kind of a baby sexologist, and she's taken me under her
mm,
wing to mentor me, and we have a beautiful partnership. It's nice. We have very, very, very different personalities, and they come together
mm,
so nicely in this podcast. So
mm.
if you want to deep dive into some of the things that I just barely touched on, go ahead and listen to the Sensational Sex Podcast. I recommend starting at the beginning because it is designed to, episode
Builds.
3, each episode builds on each other. Give us a
Okay.
little grace. The first few episodes were a little rough, as the beginning of most podcasts are, but
Sure.
we get
Yes.
better with the audio and stuff.
Yeah.
That's the first place to connect. Secondly, if you are anywhere close to the Atlanta area, I'm really, really excited. I'm in the final stages of really, it's the beginning of my dream. I've always had this dream of I one-stop shop, one place where all aspects of sexual wellness can be addressed. And I have partnered
Mm,
with Michelle Zinni, who is the owner of Zinnovations, which is a med spa in Milton, Georgia. And she has all of these incredible physical treatments for sexual dysfunction, everything from vaginal
mm,
rejuvenation. There's something called the
mm.
Emsella chair. You sit on it and you get 10,000 Kegels in 8 minutes. So pelvic floor.
Wow.
Yeah, all of these really amazing physical treatments. She has a doctor on staff that does hormone
Mm,
replacement therapy. So she already has in existence the physical medical side, and she's brought me in to help with the emotional relationship side. And so it's going to be what
mm.
we think is really the first multidisciplinary comprehensive holistic sexual wellness clinic in the United States.
Wow.
So
Wow. How exciting.
so we're honestly, we're just in the very beginning stages of putting it together, but if you want to learn more about that, go to
Fine.
zinnovations.com. And additionally, and if you're
Mm.
not local, if you're nowhere near, but you want to learn about my coaching or interested in working with me, go to suburbanintimacy.com and book a complimentary discovery call. I would love to help you with whatever challenge that you're experiencing.
Beautiful. Well, I'm sure you felt her energy. Amy is absolutely wonderful. She's so knowledgeable. All of the show notes are going to be in or all the links are going to be in our show notes. So definitely give her a follow, listen to her podcast. I know I will definitely be doing so. Hit her up to chat. Um, I can already tell I haven't worked with you personally, but I know you wouldn't regret it. So thank you, Amy, for being on the show. Thank you for all of your knowledge and thank you for your openness and vulnerability. Any ending comments that you would like to leave us with here? Leave
Thank
us with, leave us here with, I can't think. Leave us here today.
just thank you so much for the opportunity, and every single person who tuned in and listened to Jaleesa week after week. Just seriously, congratulate yourself for investing time and energy into yourself. Sometimes this is the only time you can take for yourself, but you're doing that. And just thank you so much. This has always been wonderful to be able to work with you.
Beautiful. All right, you guys. Well, that is it for today's episode. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining me today on Mindset Mastery Podcast. I hope today's conversation inspired you to embrace your own journey of balancing motherhood and entrepreneurship. Remember, it's all about mastering your mindset to create a life of success and fulfillment in both areas. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, share it with a friend, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more incredible moms just like you. Until next time, keep showing up, keep growing, and mastering your mindset.